Is it kind of strange that you used to live here and you were down to your last pennies, I guess, and now when you come back here, it's with CNN or Madonna and Guy Ritchie. Is it kind of strange the way that your life has just taken that change, that turn?
No, I think that it was. I know this sounds strange, but I think it was to be expected. I had said in another conversation we had, I'd talked about this, but I had a dramatic change that occurred in my life 19 years ago. I changed the orientation of my life. I took control of my life. And I think that if you do that and you stay true to it, and you stay true to a set of principles of being fair, honest, positive and creative in what you do, of pledging not to harm others and to minimize any amount of harm that you do to other people or to the world around you. You don't take drugs, you don't poison your mind, you don't take alcohol, you focus on what you're doing, keep your discipline, then I think it's natural that positive outcomes will occur. And if you happen to be in the field of writing movies, then you're going to meet famous people such as Madonna and Guy Ritchie or Johnny Depp and so forth. So there's a sense in which it's a natural progression from taking control of your life and saying, I'm going to make my destiny happen. I'm not going to allow destiny to control me. I'm going to control my destiny. I think that we can expect it to happen in those ways. So it's not really a surprise. The surprise really is when you meet these people. Like to meet Madonna, and we'd heard so much. My wife, Princess, and I had talked with a lot of people who said to us that they knew her pretty well. And were telling us, oh, she's very fussy and she won't eat this and she won't eat that and she won't do this and she won't do that and don't say this and don't talk about that. And then we met her and she ate everything that we put in front of her, every kind of Indian food. Didn't matter how spicy it was, she loved it. And as long as it was vegetarian, she ate it, and which is the same for me. And she was so unfussy. And the thing is, it's not surprising that I've come to know these people. The surprising thing for me is that they're almost universally nice people. I haven't met anyone at that level, whether it's Richard Branson or Johnny Depp or Madonna, to name a couple, who are not very, very nice people and deeply concerned about the world they live in and trying to make a difference. That's the thing that's to me very surprising. I mean, it's a good surprise.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, very encouraging, you're right, because she is portrayed as being somebody who's extremely set in her ways, and sort of to imagine her in a place like this, coming through the slums, is it's quite difficult to picture.
I think the thing about Madonna is that she's tremendously intelligent. She is fiercely intelligent. She's very sharp, very funny, very witty, very quick, and will not accept second best, and will pick you up immediately in a conversation and will defend a position and put it forward with a rigorous intelligence. And I think that's intimidating to a lot of people. I love it. And I mean, for me, it can't get any better than that. So I love that about her. But I think a lot of people are intimidated by that, and that's sending their impression, they're reading that as something that it's not. It's simply a fierce intelligence, and she's one of the smartest people you could ever meet. It's a long story and a crowded one. I was a revolutionary who lost his ideals in heroin, a philosopher who lost his integrity in crime, and a poet who lost his soul in a maximum security prison. When I escaped from that prison over the front wall between two gun towers, I became my country's most wanted man. Luck ran with me and flew with me across the world to India, where I joined the Bombay Mafia. I worked as a gun runner, a smuggler, and a counterfeiter. I was chained on 3 continents, beaten, stabbed, starved. I went to war. I ran into the enemy guns, and I survived while other men around me died. So it begins, this story, like everything else, with a woman and a city and a little bit of luck.
Greg, Shantaram, the book, starts with you coming to Mumbai. You live in a hostel for a bit, but then you move into this slum. what were your first impressions of the place that would be your home?
I was horrified. And I looked at the expressions on the people, and they looked to me so menacing and so strange as I came in. Years later, after I'd lived here myself for a year and a half, and I saw other foreigners coming in into the place, I had the same expression on my face, and that expression is, what is this person so afraid of? This is a safe place. And that's what they were thinking. They were looking at me, and I, of course, had fear on my face and dread. But as I discovered, it's actually a very safe place to live. Once you're here, you're in a community that will protect you, and a safe community of good people, and who become very good neighbors.
Did you not have that fear like, oh my God, I've got to get out, I've got to get out?
No, that kind of claustrophobic feeling. I don't have that, thanks be to God. That's one of the reasons I think why I love India. The dread that I felt was the poverty and sickness I saw around me, and I thought, I can't fix this. In the end, I realized you don't have to fix it. You have to embrace it. You have to become part of it and do your best, as everyone else does who lives here. Everyone does their best. Everyone tries and does their best.
So when you come into this slum now, is it a sort of a nostalgic feeling in a way?
Yes, especially at night, because at night it's very different. It's very dark. You can see the fires in people's houses, and people are cooking, and you can see all those fires inside. 1 second, I'm just going to make sure that the dogs don't bite anybody. Samadna? For Madam? Okay. All of these things have been set up for the holy celebration. They're fantastic, aren't they?
Yeah.
All done by hand. So this is where my clinic used to be. Sorry, this house was very small, with a chota ghar mein, and this very, very small chota ghar, little house, was here. And I used to come and look out at these towers that were being built. If you look behind there, if you come over here, you can see the twin towers, these tall buildings. Yes. And at that time, all the houses were very small, and you could stand up and look above all of them.
But the thing is that you weren't a doctor. I mean, you kind of became one by default because you happened to have a medical kit.
Yeah, I'd done a St. John's ambulance course, and so I knew how to treat victims of various things, from burns to various other things. I had a very complex medical kit that friends had given me in New Zealand with some kind of prescience. They'd somehow known that I would need this, and they gave me two things, a guitar and a medical kit. I didn't know how to play the guitar, and I wasn't a doctor, but as it turned out, both things became very important to me. The guitar became a way of communicating with other people, and the medical kit came to define my existence here in the slum. I became the doctor here for my 20,000, 25,000 neighbors during those 18 months that I lived here in this slum, and for the years beyond, because I always kept coming back every week, once or twice a week.
And when people started calling you doctor and asking you to fix all manner of ailments, did you never just sort of suddenly go, you know, I'm actually not a doctor?
Oh, I said it many, many times, and people would nod their heads and say, and then turn and say, he's an excellent doctor. And I'd say, please tell them I'm not a doctor. And they would say, very good, and turn and say, he's the best doctor you'll ever find. And so no, people didn't accept it. Because I was treating people, doing first aid, they thought I was a doctor.
Shantaram's characters are all made up by you, except the experiences are real. I mean, you've been upfront about the fact that the characters are invented, but the experiences really did happen to you. How come you decided not to go with just a straight memoir?
Because I'm a novelist. For me, as speaking as a writer, the most beautiful and profound way to talk about the human condition is through writing art, through the novel. And I think it's the single most difficult of all of the arts to achieve is a novel at the highest level, a literary novel. And the construction of such a novel is extremely difficult, and to carry that off, you actually have to inhabit your reader's mind, and you actually have to touch their soul. I mean, pretty much anybody can write a memoir and tell their own story, but it takes a certain kind of writer to be able to create a novel, and that was for me the greatest challenge.
Ladies, we've just come at water time.
It's actually a really happy little scene. Were you changed by your time in the slum?
I was changed by living here. I learned a lot about how people of different faiths can live together really happily. Without political pressure, without social pressure, people of different faiths live very happily. The Christians celebrate with the Muslims celebrate with the Hindus celebrate with the Parsis celebrate with the Sikhs, and they all celebrate with the animists, and so forth. This is Motions in the Oceans.
Yeah.
So this is where you go when you want to, and the tide is out, and then in the evening the tide will come and sweep across and clean it.
Right.
Women have to go down here on the rocks. Of course, one of the highlights of living in a place like this is that the police can't find you. We always know these streets better than they do, so they can never find you. Once you're in, you can navigate your way through and lose them anywhere.
Well, you know what they say about back alleys at
Hello?
night? Was this ever dangerous?
No, only for bad people.
Yeah, one of the things that really, really stood out to me in the book, because it just made goosebumps pop up everywhere, is when Lynn brings Carla back to the slum, and they're walking down a little alleyway, pitch black, and then the rats.
Yes.
Is that really how it happens?
Yes, it does. In the slums, the rats come every night, and they come in a wave at around 3 o'clock in the morning usually.
A wave of rats?
A wave. 2 and 3 deep. They run on top of each other's backs, 2 and 3 deep. They sweep through the slums, and they consume all the garbage which is left there. And they eat everything, paper, plastic, bits of cans, everything, and they leave it clear and clean and fresh. Without the rats, the slum couldn't survive. It would choke to death on its own rubbish and filth. Oh, आप ठीक? कैसा गाया तुम्हें? बड़ा है? अरे क्या डोली है? अरे बाप रे! Bye bye Ritika. दूसरा टाइम फिर मिलेंगी. There was a young guy living here and working in my clinic with me on a part-time basis, and has always lived in the same slum, in the same community. He's always been here. Now all of this will be cleared. It will all be gone within 1 to 2 years, because big development companies have come in and they're buying this land in huge amounts. They're coming with trucks full of money, literally trucks full of money, and they're buying this land. They're buying all these houses, and all these little houses are very expensive now, because they know that this land is in demand. They want now to build big developments.
Does it sadden you that within 1 to 2 years, everything that...
No, I'm sure that the people will go to something better.
Hitting the road, we explore another key Shantaram location, Leopold's Cafe, also a target in the Mumbai attacks.
Alone again, I sat down, set my chair against the wall, and let the activity of Leopold's and its clamorous patrons close over me. Leopold's was a place for people to see, to be seen, and to see themselves in the act of being seen.
I'm reading it right at the moment.
Oh, I hope you're liking it.
It's absolutely amazing.
I'm reading it. I hate it. I've come to meet it. No, I hope you like it.
I don't know, is the whole thing true? Or how much of it is there?
See, told you.
Yeah.
It's hard to get that.
All the experiences.
So, you know, the Mumbai attackers decided to target this place. How did you feel when you found out that they were trying to hurt not only this place but also its clientele?
Obviously horrified, and on the other hand, it's something that was to be expected. We had anticipated that there would be an attack. I had spoken with the two brothers who are here, who own Leopold's, and the two brothers had said to me, Farzad and Farhan, we are expecting that there will be some kind of attack, but what they were expecting was a bomb. So they were watching every abandoned bag, anything that was left here for more than a few seconds. They were extremely vigilant on that. So it was to be expected. As it turns out, it wasn't a bomb, it was people throwing a hand grenade and then walking in with machine guns and opening fire on people who were sitting there eating their dinner and having a drink.
But it's such an unassuming place, isn't it? You know, to find itself as the target of terror, but also to be featured so prominently in Shantaram. Why did you decide to have it as such a factor of the book?
I needed a place where the characters, the non-Indian characters, the European characters in the book, could interact with one another. And the two other places that are major locations in the book. Good, man.
I see you.
The two other locations in the book.
Anywhere in this city.
That's one of the brothers who owns the place. And so one of the reasons I chose Leopold, among many others, the fact of course, that I spent a lot of time here, that I had a table here that was my table, that I had a lot of adventures that either began or transpired or ended in Leopold's. I had the two settings that were for exclusively Indian, were the village and the slum. And it would have been unnatural for my European characters to all assemble somehow in the slum or in the village. So it gave me a third alternative, a place where my European characters could interact with one another and where I could slowly start to introduce them to the reader and begin the development, the character development of them. The waiters here at Leopold's used to be trained. They would be hired on the basis of how they could fight. They had to go, the waiters here had to fight for 30 seconds with a big Sikh guy who was working here in Leopold's. And if they lasted 30 seconds with him, then they could work in Leopold. So they were hired for their ability to fight. It was a very rough place in those days, very tough. So there was a big fight, and I was with 3 girls. And I saw this coming toward me and thought, okay, I gotta move. We gotta do something. And the table started collapsing, and the big brawl or fight started coming toward us like a wave. And I stood up at one stage and took out my 2 knives, thinking they're coming directly at us. And there's people with chairs and bottles. And so I picked up the 2 knives, put the girls behind me, and pulled out the 2 knives. And everyone came like this and then went away. And it stopped. No one came to me. And it was finished, and then it was over, put the knives back, the girls sat down, we were fine. But the owner, who was the father of the 2 boys who own it now, came to me and said, if you're carrying those knives in this place, when the police come, it'll be a problem for us. Can we ask you to leave them outside? And I said, no, it's too dangerous for me. I tell you what I'll do. I will hide them under the table. So I made a special slide underneath that table. And when I came in, I used to put my 2 knives under the table, so I wasn't carrying weapons. And then when I left, I would take them and put them in, and so on. And for years, that was always there. It was my table. Bizarre.
You spent many years as a heroin addict, which is what landed you in trouble in the first place, and you turned to armed robbery to fund your habit. Take us back to those days.
I lost the custody of my daughter. It was particularly hard, and I was too young and too weak and too immature. And on the night that I lost my daughter, a friend came to see me and said, I knew you'd be in this condition. I knew you'd be shattered and broken-hearted. I've got just the thing that's going to help you. Rolled up my sleeve and gave me my first injection of heroin. And he was right, in a sense. The fact is...
This was a friend?
Yeah. Well, an acquaintance. And within a couple of years, I was so broken down, I'd lost everything and sold everything, dropped out of university, stopped writing. I was a published author before I started taking drugs, and ended up taking a toy gun and doing a robbery to get money for drugs. And I was arguably the most incompetent criminal in the history of crime. I went in saying, I'm terribly sorry to do this. You can see I have a weapon. I had a 3-piece suit. I showed this toy pistol and said, I'm terribly sorry. I don't want to point this. Someone might get hurt. And so people would start putting money on the counter. And I said, no, please stop. I only need a little bit of money to get my heroin. And they would look at you and go, okay, and put more money on the counter, saying, no, please stop giving me money. And I think the phrase, please stop giving me money, qualifies me for being the most incompetent criminal in the history of crime. You cross a line when you do this. You feel so sick with shame that you have fallen so low, that I did certainly, that you feel that you're damned and beyond redemption. And so I kept going into that life until it led to prison.
10 years in maximum security just must be, I can't even imagine how daunting to sit there and look at that stretch in front of you. So eventually you plotted your escape, and that's one of the most nerve-wracking bits of the book, Shantaram, in which you describe how you absconded. Was it as dramatic as you made out?
Oh, much, much more so. I've been through a lot of strange and deadly experiences, but escaping from prison is the thing that puts everything else into a kind of context. there is a moment, of course you're risking your life. If they see you, they will shoot you and they will kill you. But when you stand on that wall, there is the exhilaration of freedom. When you escape and you're standing on the front wall of a maximum security prison at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and you're between two gun towers, and you're going to slide down an improvised rope made from an electrical cord and escape. Standing there at that moment, there is an exhilaration that's like nothing else I've ever known. When you land on the ground, there is a sense of horror like nothing else I've ever known, because you know you have just cut the umbilical. That extension cord is like an umbilical cord, and when you walk away from it, and you walk away from that prison, you know you will not see your mother, your father, your brother, your children. You'll not see anyone ever again of the family you love. You may never see them. There is a loneliness in it that's so extreme that I used it as the theme of the book Shantaram, because the theme of that novel is the exile experience.
What's been your darkest moment?
The darkest moment, spiritually, for me, was in Afghanistan, when we had to fight our way out. We were trapped on a mountain. It was supposed to be a matter of a couple of weeks, going in there, dropping our cargo, coming out. We got trapped on a mountain. We were surrounded by Russian and Afghan regular army forces, and we had to fight our way out. The other men had to fight. I was hopeless at it, and I couldn't have fought my way out of a paper bag compared to them. They were real soldiers, and the Mujahideen. I could be shot at and not be sickened by it. There were mortar rounds coming in. We were being under fire, and I somehow accepted that, and somehow it didn't cause me a lot of psychic stress or psychic pain. It's just fear. But this, excuse me, the psychic pain came when I took a gun and ran with the other men toward the enemy, with the idea that we will kill to survive. And there was a moment in doing this that's so sickening, when you realize you just lost a piece of your soul and you're probably never going to get it back. That moment of running toward other human beings you don't know, and with the intention that you will kill them to survive. It was this was the darkest moment for me.
The Path to Redemption, how a Mumbai landmark inspired Roberts during his criminal years.
Birds of fire in the approaching sunset wheeled and turned as one in their flocks, like banners of waving silk. From a low-walled courtyard on the white marble island of Haji Ali Mosque, I watched pilgrims and pious local residents wend and weave, leaving the shrine for the shore along the flat stone path.
So what does the Haji Ali Shrine mean to you?
Well, it's a place of peace, a place of solitude, a place where people from all over the city make their journey to try to find some sense of forgiveness for the things they've done in the past. But it also happened to be a place where gangsters in Bombay, if they knew that they were going to make a confrontation with another gang, a confrontation, a war that might end in them losing their lives, we would go there, we would wash first and bathe, we would then make this journey across to Haji Ali, to the saint. We would ask that we be prepared for what may come, and then we walk back along that path and think only about the future and have cut the tie with the past.
In the book, Lynn sort of has this time with the mafia that almost sounds magical in a way. Is that indicative of your experiences with the mafia?
No, there was a lot more to it than that. And in the sequel to Shantaram, which I've been writing for the last 4 years, the book deals with a lot more with the conflict between different gangs. There's a certain amount of it in Shantaram, a little bit, especially at the end of the book. But the actual day-to-day conflict, the grinding day-to-day conflict, isn't in that book, because the theme of the book is the exile experience. And it's more relevant to the next book, the theme of which is the search. And so we see an exploration of that whole day-to-day conflict level, the struggle to survive, the struggle for another few centimeters of territory that each gang will try to get, because that gives them the advantage over the other. So that, if you like, that pot full of crabs or pot full of lobsters who are all pulling one another in, you never have to put a lid on a pot of lobsters, because they can't get out. As soon as one gets near the edge, the others will pull him back, and so they never escape. And that whole struggle is in the next book.
Are you still friends with your mob mates? Do you still speak to them?
Not really. I mean, most of them are dead. most of they either retired and left and went away, or the older ones, and the ones who are more my age have mostly died. The younger ones who are involved today are the children of the men I knew in those years, and I see them from time to time, and they will stop me and say, "My dad knew you in another time," and so forth. And say, "I hope he was on my side." And they all laugh and say, "No, my dad liked you and it was okay," and so on. But I don't have any day-to-day contact with people who are involved in crime because my life changed.
You were eventually recaptured and sent back to finish your sentence in Australia. When you were on the run, you obviously couldn't see any of your family, including your little daughter, of whom you'd lost custody. Have you re-established contact with them now?
Yes, with all my family, and very, very lucky. You know, one of the things I've discovered about prisons is that most of the men I've met in there are not really bad men, they're sad men from situations where there isn't a lot of love. And when I was reunited with my family, in a sense, I expected that I might find anger and resentment and for what I'd put them through all those years, but they weren't. I'm so tremendously lucky because they were so loving and forgiving that it helped me to get through the experience and to survive and to have the strength to keep going and to say, I will stay on this path. I won't take drugs. I won't drink alcohol and so forth. I won't go in these negative directions. I'll stay in a positive direction because they were so loving and forgiving.
It was inevitable, I guess, that Shantaram would one day be made into a movie. Johnny Depp is going to be playing, ostensibly, you. Shantaram is nearly 1,000 pages long. Are you at all worried that the movie might skim over important parts that are in the book?
No, I'm not worried about that at all. I think I'm much less precious about it than, say, Warner Brothers or the very talented producer Graham King. Generally speaking, I think film has to be free to express itself. And if that means completely changing it and saying, I want to take this out, and I want to go in this direction, I think they have to be free to do that. And I don't fear that at all.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Loved it.
No, it's a pleasure.